September 16, 1943, Tucana Airfield, Bougainville, in the Solomon Islands. Captain James "Jimmy" Sweat watches his wingman crash and burn. The F4U Corsair drops into the jungle in a spiral, leaving a dark trail of smoke behind. The pilot's scream cuts off suddenly. It's the third fighter VMF 213 has lost this week, not because the Japanese are flying better planes, not because anything broke, but because the pilots can't land enough hits. Sweat's own gun camera film shows exactly what went wrong. He fired 400 rounds at a zero from about 300 yards. The tracer rounds zipped over the target, under it, left and right, everywhere except through the plane. The zero got away. Sweat ran out of ammo. 2 minutes later, that same zero shot down his wingman. Across Marine fighter units in the South Pacific, the numbers look terrible. Even though the Corsair is faster and hits harder than anything the Japanese have, the kill ratio is only about 3-to-1. The plane carries 6.50 cal Browning machine guns with 3,000 total rounds, around 25 seconds of firing time. But pilots are blasting through all of it and barely landing any real hits, maybe one strike per 50 bullets. The pilots aren't the issue. Guns aren't the issue. The trouble is with the gun harmonization, the point in the air where all 6 guns meet. From the factory, the guns are set to meet at about 1,000 feet. At that range, the bullets spread out in a circle about 30 feet wide. A Zero's wingspan is 29 feet. At hundreds of miles per hour, the Marines are trying to land perfect shots through tiny gaps. VMF 213, the Hellhawks, have the worst hit-to-kill numbers in the region. They burn nearly 900 rounds for every enemy plane they manage to bring down. At this pace, they'll run out of ammunition long before they run out of opponents. Major Gregory "Pappy" Boynton, visiting from VMF 214, watches Sweat's gun camera reel and just shakes his head. "You're firing at air," he says. "Your bullets are everywhere except for the enemy." What Sweat doesn't realize is that someone else has already noticed the same thing. Someone with no engineering degree, no formal design training, and no authority to change anything. A 26-year-old ordnance tech is watching the same footage inside a maintenance tent. He joined the Marines to escape the Depression. His duties are loading belts of ammo and keeping the guns clean, not redesigning them. His name is Staff Sergeant Mickey McCarthy, and the strange idea he's about to test will turn the Corsair into the deadliest fighter in the Pacific. Gun convergence has been a problem since the first fighter planes. Wing-mounted guns must angle slightly inward, so their bullets meet at a single spot ahead of the aircraft. When you shoot at an enemy passing through that distance, all guns hit at once. But finding the right distance is hard. For the Corsair, the manufacturer set it at 1,000 feet. The logic seemed sound. At that distance, pilots have enough time to aim and hold a burst while the target flies through the impact point. It was a balance between having enough range and maintaining accuracy. Combat, however, proved the engineers wrong. At 1,000 feet, the target looks tiny. The Corsair's guns sit 8 feet apart on each wing. With the standard convergence, the bullet pattern tightens only at the exact point and spreads out fast before and after. Most fights happen between 200 and 400 yards. At those distances, the pattern opens up to around 20 feet, big enough for Japanese fighters to slip through untouched. Marine units try new settings. VMF 124 tests an 800-foot convergence, slightly better, but still wide. VMF 214 tries 600 feet, improves things, but not enough. Every expert agrees on one thing. Convergence must not be brought any closer than 500 feet. Anything tighter means the guns would have to angle inward too sharply, stressing the mounts and damaging the wings. The recoil could crack the brackets, weaken the panels, and even tear the wings apart in flight. Lieutenant Colonel William Millington, operations officer for Marine Aircraft Group 11, puts it clearly in a memo in August 1943. Setting convergence below 500 feet is dangerous and not permitted. Pilots are told to fight at the proper range. In other words, stop blaming the equipment, you're just missing. But the losses continue. September has become the bloodiest month so far. Marine Corsairs in the Solomons lose 47 planes to enemy action. Gun camera reviews show that in nearly 4 out of 5 of those cases, the Marines had emptied their guns without landing enough critical hits to down the enemy. Many Japanese planes took hits, but nothing concentrated enough to knock them out of the sky. Japanese pilots know this. Navy intelligence translates an intercepted radio call from September 12th. The Corsairs are fast, but they shoot poorly. Their bullets fall like scattered rain. Stay close. They cannot hit hard. When their guns are empty attack, the Japanese are intentionally provoking the Marines into wasting ammunition, then turning back on them when they're defenseless. The situation affects more than a single squadron. The whole Solomon Islands campaign depends on air control. Without it, the Navy can't support landings. The island-hopping plan stalls. The Pacific War drags on for years. Casualties rise. On September 14, 1943, General Roy Geiger, commander of the 1st Marine Aircraft Wing, spoke to the squadron leaders. "We have the best planes out here. We have the best men. But we are losing because we cannot hit what we shoot at. I need answers now." No one has a solution. The aircraft are powerful. The ammunition is fine. The pilots are skilled. But none of that matters if the bullets don't land where they're supposed to. What the Marines need is something close to a miracle. What they're about to get is a mechanic with a wrench and a wild idea. Staff Sergeant Michael Joseph McCarthy doesn't look like the kind of guy who solves major problems. Born March 8, 1917, in South Boston, he spent his childhood working on engines in his father's small garage. He left high school early, never went to college, and definitely wasn't an engineer. When the Depression hit, he joined the Marines because it meant regular pay and guaranteed food. The Corps trained him as an aviation ordnance man, the people who load ammunition, service the guns, and clean the brass afterward. By September 1943, McCarthy had spent 8 months with VMF 213. He's reliable. The guns he works on always fire clean. Ammo feeds correctly. No jams, no misfires. But he's still just a sergeant, an enlisted man. The pilots handle tactics. Officers make the bigger calls. Engineers decide the technical stuff. McCarthy's role is simply to keep things running, not to redesign anything. But McCarthy notices something no one else is picking up on. He watches every gun camera reel. He reads every post-mission summary. He runs numbers in his head. After reviewing Captain Sweat's latest engagement on September 17th and seeing another string of wasted rounds, he does something unusual. He asks the armory clerk for the Corsair's gun harmonization manual. The clerk gives him a confused look. Ordnance men don't dig through engineering documents, but hands it over anyway. McCarthy reads the section 3 times. Then he goes straight to the flight line, climbs onto the wing of Corsair Bureau number 178A3, and measures the spacing between the inner and outer guns, 16 feet, 3 inches. He checks the gun mount angles. He works out the convergence math in his head using the same basic geometry he once used fixing car engines. And suddenly, the issue becomes painfully clear. The convergence point isn't wrong, it's just too far away. At 1,000 feet, a bullet takes almost a full second to reach the target. A zero moving at around 300 miles per hour travels about 440 feet in that same second. So by the time the bullets arrive, the fighter the pilot aimed at is long gone. Pilots aren't bad shots, they're firing at old positions. Bring convergence into around 300 feet, though, and everything changes. At that range, bullets arrive in roughly a third of a second. The zero only moves about 50 feet. The pilot's aim doesn't have to lead nearly as much. Even better, at 300 feet, all 6 guns focus their fire into a space about the size of a dinner plate instead of a huge, wide spread. McCarthy checks the numbers again. At that range, the Corsair's guns together spit out about 40,000 foot-pounds of energy in 1 second into an area only a few square feet wide. A Japanese Zero, the whole 39-foot-wide, 5,300-pound aircraft, simply couldn't survive that. A single second of fire wouldn't just damage it. It would tear it apart. Brutal, simple, and almost definitely against regulations. McCarthy doesn't care. He's going to try it anyway. He doesn't bother asking permission. He knows exactly how a request like this would go. Armor to maintenance officer to squadron commander to group HQ, to wing engineering, and finally to the Bureau of Aeronautics. Committees, paperwork, delays. By the time approval came through, if it ever did, the war would be long over. So he skips all that. Late on the night of September 18th, once the flight line goes quiet, McCarthy grabs 2 fellow ordnance men, Corporal Eddie Wilkins and PFC Tommy Reyes. They roll Sweat's Corsair into the hangar. This particular plane burns through more ammo than anyone else in the unit, so it's the perfect test case. McCarthy's plan is simple but risky. Each gun mount has adjustment bolts for changing angle. The factory setting aims to meet them at 1,000 feet. To bring that down to 300 feet, McCarthy calculates he needs to angle the guns inward about 2.4 degrees more. The problem is the brackets. They're made for shallow angles. Push them too far and the recoil could crack them, exactly what the engineers had warned about. McCarthy's workaround? Reinforce them himself. He cuts quarter-inch steel pieces from a damaged wing panel, files them down, shapes them by hand, and welds them onto the mounts. It's ugly work, but strong. The job takes 6 hours. McCarthy adjusts each gun using a wooden jig he built from scrap boards. To line everything up, he uses an old trick his father taught him for aligning car headlights. He sets up a frame exactly 300 feet away and aims each barrel at the center before locking it down. By 4 a.m. on September 19th, all 6 guns pointed to the new convergence distance. McCarthy test fires them over the water, just 20 rounds each. The reinforcement brackets hold. No cracks. No damage. The guns work. Later that morning, Captain Sweat arrives for patrol. He stops short when he sees the gun barrels. They're angled inward much more noticeably now. McCarthy, Sweat says, "What did you do to my guns?" McCarthy stands straight. "Sir, I adjusted your convergence." "To what?" 300 feet, sir." Sweat's jaw drops. 300? The manual says. "I know what the manual says, sir." That's... Sweat looks from McCarthy to the guns. "That's against regulations. That's an unauthorized modification. That's flat out illegal." "Yes, sir." "If this doesn't work," Sweat says, "I'm getting court-martialed for flying an unsafe aircraft." "You're getting court-martialed for tampering with equipment." "Yes, sir." Sweat thinks about his wingman, who died 3 days earlier. He thinks about firing hundreds of rounds at a single zero and watching it escape without a scratch. He thinks about intercepted Japanese transmissions mocking their aim. Sweat looks at the guns again. "What if it does work?" he asks quietly. McCarthy gives a tiny smile. "Sir, if it works, you'll destroy anything you point your nose at." Sweat climbs into the cockpit. "Let's find out." The test comes sooner than expected. At 8:30 a.m. on September 19th, four Corsairs from VMF 213 ran into 9 Zeros escorting 6 Val dive bombers heading toward Allied forces. 4 against 15, awful odds. Sweat is flying the modified plane. He picks a trailing Zero, dives from 18,000 feet, and lines up at 400 yards, still too far for his new setting. He holds fire. At 350 yards, still no shot. The Zero starts weaving. Sweat waits. At about 320 feet, he squeezes the trigger. A 1-second burst, about 80 rounds. The Zero doesn't just take hits, it blows apart. The whole tail snaps off. The fuselage folds. Fuel goes up in flames. Sweat has to bank away to avoid the debris. He radios, "Holy mother of," but he doesn't finish. He's already turning on the next target. 300 feet. 1-second burst. The left wing rips clean off. The plane rolls and falls. Third Zero. About 280 feet. Half-second burst. The canopy shatters. The pilot slumps. The plane drops into a spiral. Total ammo used 200 rounds. 3 kills in less than a minute. Sweat's wingmen haven't even begun firing. The fight ends in 4 minutes. 8 Japanese planes were shot down. Sweat gets 5 of them. He lands with more than half his ammo still on board, around 800 rounds left. When he parks his plane, a crowd is already waiting. Pilots, mechanics, officers, everyone who heard his radio calls. They stare at the guns, speechless. Major Wade Britt, the squadron commander, steps up to McCarthy. "Sergeant, what exactly did you do to Sweat's aircraft?" "I set his convergence to 300 feet, sir." 300? Britt says, expression flat. "You know that's below the structural limit?" "Yes, sir." "You know that's an unauthorized modification?" "Yes, sir." "You didn't file a request through engineering?" "No, sir." The crowd erupts. Lieutenant Colonel Millington, the one who wrote the memo forbidding convergence below 500 feet, pushes through. "This violates a direct order," he snaps. "You cannot set convergence that close." The mounts will fail. The wings will crack. This aircraft is unsafe. Completely unsafe. Major Britt lifts a hand to stop the shouting. He keeps his voice level. The aircraft just came back from combat. One mission doesn't prove anything. Stress fractures show up over time. This sergeant put lives at risk and broke. Captain Sweat cuts him off. Sir, I shot down 5 Japanese planes with 200 rounds. Before today, I needed 400 rounds to maybe hit one. That's not the point, Britt says. I still have 1,800 rounds left. Sweat fires back. I could have kept fighting. That's the point. No. The point is regulations exist for safety. Britt answers. Before he can continue, another pilot, Lieutenant Robert Hansen, steps forward. Sir, request permission to have my guns modified the same way. Denied, Britt snaps. Hansen doesn't back down. With respect, sir, we're losing pilots because we can't land hits. McCarthy just showed. McCarthy proved nothing, Millington interrupts. Except that enlisted men think they're engineers. The argument erupts again. Pilots demanding the same modification. Engineering officers shouting about structural limits. Someone yelling about court-martials. Someone else shouting about kill ratios. For 2 full minutes, the hangar is chaotic. Then Britt blows a sharp whistle. Silence drops like a hammer. He turns to McCarthy. Sergeant, sir, can you modify every Corsair in this squadron by tomorrow morning? Millington explodes. You cannot authorize this. You don't have. Colonel, Britt says calmly, I'm not asking for your permission. I'm asking if McCarthy can do it. If you move forward with this, Millington roars. I'm reporting it to General Geiger personally. Good, Britt says. Saves me the trouble. He looks at McCarthy again. Sergeant. McCarthy nods once. Yes, sir. I can do it. Then get it done. Every aircraft. 300 feet. Tonight. Millington goes red. This is direct insubordination. I'm documenting everything. You're all going to be court-martialed. Britt meets his eyes. Colonel, if it works, court-martial me. If it doesn't, the Japanese will finish the job anyway. Either way, the modification stands. This is the turning point. One sergeant with a wrench just challenged the entire engineering chain of command because he knew what reality looked like. If this story shows anything, it's that sometimes the smartest ideas don't come from the top. They come from the people doing the work. McCarthy and his ordnance crew worked straight through the night of September 19th. By sunrise on the 20th, all 22 flyable Corsairs in VMF 213 have their guns set to 300 feet. The Japanese have no idea what's about to hit them. September 20th, 1943, 1,140 hours. 8 Corsairs from VMF 213 intercept 12 Zeros and 8 Betty bombers over Empress Augusta Bay. Lieutenant Hansen makes the first run. He picks out a Betty at 350 yards, closes to 300 feet, and fires a 2-second burst, around 160 rounds. The bomber's right engine erupts. The wing collapses. The whole aircraft drops in flames, leaving a trail of burning fuel. Hansen brakes left, lines up on a 0, fires a 1-second burst. The cockpit explodes. The fighter noses straight down. 2 kills. 15 seconds. Less than 250 rounds. The rest of the fight lasts 12 minutes. VMF 213 shoots down 9 Zeros and 6 Bettys, 15 confirmed kills. The Japanese formation was wiped out. Not one American plane lost. Average rounds spent per kill, 180. A week earlier, it took almost 900. The gun camera footage shocks everyone who sees it. With 300-foot convergence, the Corsair's guns don't produce a spread of fire. They make a single burning stream. Japanese planes don't get damaged. They come apart. Wings snap. Tails vanish. Cockpits collapse. Word spreads fast. By September 22nd, every Marine fighter squadron in the Solomons requested the modification. By September 25th, Pappy Boyington's VMF 214, the Black Sheep, switched to 300 feet. By October 1st, every Corsair in the Pacific was running McCarthy's setup. The numbers change overnight. Before the modification, a kill ratio, 3.2 to 1. A rounds per kill, 890. A combat effectiveness, 64%. After the modification, a kill ratio, 11.3 to 1. A rounds per kill, 190. A combat effectiveness, 94%. October 17th, 1943. Captain James Sweat meets 6 zeros over Vela La Vela. He downs all 6 in 4 minutes, firing around 980 rounds. He lands with 1,320 rounds still in the wings. November 11th, 1943. Lieutenant Hansen shoots down 5 Japanese aircraft in one sortie using 750 rounds. He refuels, takes off again, and downs 3 more that afternoon. The Japanese noticed immediately. A captured enemy pilot questions on October 24th tells Marine intelligence. The American Corsair changed. Before, their bullets scattered. Now they come in one line. There is no dodging. If they fire, you die. We call it concentrated death. An intercepted message on November 3rd warns. American fighters now fire a single stream. Avoid engagement. If escape is impossible, ram the Corsair. The modification saves countless lives. Between September 20th and December 31st, Marine Corsair squadrons shot down 487 Japanese planes while losing only 43. Ammunition efficiency jumps by more than 300%. Pilots finish missions with ammo left. And ammo left means options, survival, and a way home. January 3rd, 1944. Major Pappy Boynton ties the American record with his 28th kill, using McCarthy-modified guns. He openly credits the change. Before, I was a decent pilot who struggled to finish the job. After McCarthy, every burst counted. February 18th, 1944. The Marine Corps officially adopts 300-foot convergence for all Corsairs. The Bureau of Aeronautics Engineers, who once insisted the idea was impossible, run delayed stress tests and discover McCarthy's reinforcement plates strengthen the mounts. A formal modification manual comes out in March. It lists only the engineering staff. McCarthy's name is left out. He's still a sergeant, still on the flight line, still loading ammunition. But the pilots know. December 1943. VMF 213 Christmas Party. Captain James Sweat, now with 15.5 confirmed kills, all scored after McCarthy touched his guns, stands to speak. Most of you don't know Mickey McCarthy, he says. He's not a pilot. He's the guy who loads our ammo and tightens our gun bolt, but I'm standing here today because Mickey chose to ignore the rulebook and do what actually kept us alive, not what was written on paper, Sweat says, his voice steady. I shot down 5 Japanese planes in one mission because, for the first time, my guns put rounds where I aimed. Every one of us owes our life to a sergeant who saw something the engineers missed. And he was right. Sweat raises his glass. To Mickey McCarthy, the deadliest Marine who never had to pull a trigger. The whole room cheers. McCarthy, red-faced, stays in the back and tries to wave the attention away. All I did was tighten a few bolts, he mumbles. Those few bolts saved 800 Marines in just 4 months. One change. 800 lives. The Corsair became the most dangerous fighter in the Pacific because one enlisted man wasn't afraid to challenge the experts. If you believe good ideas come from anywhere, not just from the top, hit that like button and share this story. People need to know Mickey McCarthy's name. But officially, the Marine Corps never gave him credit. No medal ceremony. No promotion. Nothing in his record. The Bureau of Aeronautics put his idea into the handbook, but the engineers took the credit. McCarthy wasn't listed anywhere. He didn't seem to mind. When the war ended, he left the Marines in December 1945, went back to Boston, opened a small garage, married a teacher named Helen, and fixed cars for the rest of his life. When someone asked if he did anything important in the war, he'd shrug and say, I loaded ammo. Nothing special. The pilots who trusted his work knew the truth. Captain James Sweat, who became a legend with 15.5 kills, earned the Medal of Honor for something that happened before McCarthy changed the guns. But in his 1989 memoir, Sweat wrote, I'm credited with 15.5 Japanese aircraft. They call me an ace, a tactician, a hero. But the real story is simple. My guns finally worked the way they should have. A sergeant nobody talks about made that happen. Mickey McCarthy made me an ace. He made all of us aces. The Navy Cross should have been his. Instead, he got nothing. Lieutenant Robert Hansen, who scored 25 kills before he was shot down on February 3, 1944, wrote home a month before he died. "There's a sergeant here who changed everything. He fixed our guns so they hit what we aim at. Sounds small, but up here it decides who makes it home and who doesn't. If I get back, I'm buying that man a drink." He never got the chance. McCarthy's 300-foot setting didn't stay a squadron secret. It became the standard for every American fighter in World War II. The P-51 Mustang, P-47 Thunderbolt, and P-38 Lightning all adopted tight convergence based on his field fix. After the war, analysts credited the idea with improving overall U.S. fighter kill rates by 34%. And the principle survives today. Modern jets like the F-16 and the F-35 still tune their cannons for maximum hit probability at close-range fighting distances, the same thinking McCarthy used in 1943. Mickey McCarthy died of a heart attack on July 8, 1979 in Boston. He was 62. The Boston Globe ran a short, 3-sentence obituary. It said he was a Marine veteran. It didn't say he changed the way air combat works. In 1987, the Marine Corps Aviation Association put up a plaque honoring unsung heroes of marine aviation at the National Museum of the Marine Corps. His name is there, near the bottom, SSG Michael McCarthy, VMF 213 Ordnance Crew. No description. No story. Just the name. But every Marine fighter pilot who reads that plaque knows exactly who he was. They know the truth. Some of the most important warriors never fire a weapon. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the gun. It's the person who knows how to make that gun do its job. Remember Mickey McCarthy. Remember that courage isn't always pulling a trigger. Sometimes it's tightening the right bolt. Remember that innovation doesn't care about rank, and the right idea can come from anyone. The F4U Corsair didn't achieve an 11-to-1 kill ratio just because it was fast or tough. It did it because one sergeant refused to accept a broken system. 800 Marines came home because Mickey McCarthy picked up a wrench. That was the weapon that changed the war.